Hello, Samadan here, and what a week of World of Warcraft. We've got dragons, we've got professions, we've got Wrath of the Lich King, we've got all this amazing stuff coming in World of Warcraft, and I couldn't be happier. This is absolutely fantastic news. I'm really happy with the way things are turning out here. It's just brilliant, and I'm really looking forward to it. Now, there's lots to talk on the Wowhead blog about professions, because it was a real surprise how much that Blizzard are going into depth in professions for 10.0. So I'll talk about that in the Wowhead blog in the second half of this video. First, I'll talk about what I've been doing this week in terms of my gold making and what plans I'm going to make for the future and how it's all going to pan out. So at the moment with my characters, I've been ticking through my professions. We've been going through a kind of like a cruising phase now. With basically everything set up. I've got the reputations I need for my main professions. I've got the legendaries I want. I'm not going to bother leveling up anymore till 9.25 comes out. So what I've got, I'm making a few sales on. I've got the Crafter's Mark gear that I'm putting the pure air sail extensions on, every piece of that, getting the occasional sales of that. And then I've got the whole breadth of items that I'm selling from the old world professions as well, with the Mage Tower contributing to that. So it's all very steady ticking through. I'm in a kind of like a mode where I'm just literally logging on, listing all my auctions, occasionally once a week restocking on everything, and then rinse and repeat. And the gold is coming in nicely. We are currently at 1.2 million. I've gone through and listed all my auctions on already. I'll just pick up the gold just to show the kind of sales I've been having on my small little server here, Shadow Song. So you can see we've got some enchants, both old world and current ones. So the Sinful Revelation, Eternal Intellect, those kind of things, just small fry really. Feasts are doing well there, Bloodless Hedonism. And then the old world enchants, Mongoose, doing 3,500 on that. Celestial Guidance, I've got some good sales on that. Mark of the Hidden Satyr, 2,900. So these will be people doing things for the Mage Tower, which is fantastic. And then we've got the old cosmetic things, the standard, bags and party hats, shirts, all the steady things. Occasional big sellers down here. We've got a Grimveiled Cape, which is probably a rank 7 at 37,000, I think. It's a shame you can't actually tell which that is. And then we've got Shadowlace Tunic, which will be probably one of the Crafter's Mark 4 or Crafter's Mark of the Eternal. Again, I'll put a pure air sail extension on that. So this is a really good broad section of what I've been selling. 75,000 is really happy for a mailbox from last night's listings. Obviously it's the weekend, so I tend to get a few more sales then. So I'll collect that up and just jump onto a couple of other characters and show the sales on those. So Bridget, my dual crafter and engineer, doing very well, just steadily going through things. Have all the rank 7 dual crafting rings and necklaces, so those are always good. I've got a sale of one here at 77,000, one of the older ones at 7,000, and then there's just general bits and pieces. Seem to get a few sales of those scattering through. So another mailbox, 96,000. This is really nice. I don't tend to get that many legendary sales, so when I do get them, they're really nice, but bulk of it is just trying to spread it out with things like the Crafter's Mark gear as well, which you can get for a decent price. And occasionally I get the odd Panther sale as well, which is really nice for here. And Earthen, my leatherworker, couple of sales here as well. Pure SL extensions, so I am selling the actual enhancements themselves occasionally, and another rank 7 legendary here, the Umberhide Gauntlets, for 41,000. So you can see here, the bulk of my sales, obviously last night, have been through legendary sales at rank 7. So I've got a leatherworking one, a dual crafting one, and a tailoring one, which is really nice. I don't tend to get that many sales that often, but I'll collect this out and have a look. So we're at 1.44 million gold. I have been buying a couple of tokens when the price was quite nice, because I've been doing some extra stuff in the background, getting myself ready for both Wrath of the Lich King and getting myself ready for the next expansion. So I have been buying a few tokens, which is why when you have a look at my graph at the moment, this is the last 6 months, so still haven't recovered from the great spend, but I'm not really expecting a huge amount here at this point. I'm just ticking through. I mean, you can see here, this is a token spend there. There is a good steady incline into my gold making, and you can see from those mailboxes, those are very reasonable. I'm very happy with those. So if I can get those consistently throughout the week, my gold will steadily rise up. I've got no real big targets at the moment. I am just refunneling my money into tokens because I'm doing something a little bit different with my accounts now. So what I've decided to do is to start running a second account, and what I plan to do with my characters here on retail is split them across both accounts so I can run 2 accounts and list auctions and craft and do things at the same time, just to make my time a little bit more efficient. Obviously, you have the running costs of 2 accounts every month. So we're talking about the token price is 276,000. So just over 500,000 gold needs to be made each month just to maintain those accounts. That's quite a lot, but I think I'm in a comfortable position at the moment with the amount of gold I'm currently making in Shadowlands and the amount of depth I've got in my professions. I should be in a good position. Ideally, I'd probably go over to 4 accounts. Then I can spread all professions and collect things up in old dungeons quite easily. But that's going to be sort of more of a long-term plan. I'm going to see how I get on with 2 accounts first and foremost. And this is me thinking further ahead into Dragon Isles, into what are we going to be doing here with professions? Am I going to have more and more alts and things like that? We're at this point now that we've got this gap of time where, the bulk of the content is done now with Shadowlands. People are playing alts, they're collecting up old gear. I'll be trying to collect up some old recipes I haven't collected, trying to pad out my professions that I haven't really spent much time on. Inscription being one of them with a lot of the old glyphs. I'll see if I can collect up a lot of those. I've got some old blacksmithing and leatherworking that I'd like to add into my profile that I have over on Patreon, where I've got all my professions just ticking through and making gold for me. And some of those don't have quite as much depth in them as I'd like. So that's something I'm going to be building on. But then, in addition to that, with the announcement of Wrath of the Lich King, Wrath was one of my favourite expansions, and I really have a lot of fond memories for it. I didn't do any dungeoning or raids or anything like that. I simply just casually went through all the zones and really enjoyed my time there. I'm really looking forward to coming back, probably because I really liked Warcraft 3 and the Frozen Throne back in the day, so it kind of reminds me of that whole storyline with Arthas, and it's proper old-school World of Warcraft. So, in anticipation of that, I've made use of my Dark Portal boost that I have here on my main account for Burning Crusade Classic, and I've created Hamadar, my new paladin, who's going to pick up a couple of professions and level those up. I'm not sure whether to do that as I level up or whether to level up to 70 and then work backwards on all the professions and try and collect the recipes before Wrath comes out. That's a big ask though. And then on my second account I have Remedy, who I've also boosted with the Dark Portal pass, so that's where my tokens have gone into just paying for these. And we have a level 58 priest, which is going to be my pocket healer, so that both of them can run around the world at the same time and level up hopefully fairly quickly. We'll see how that goes. I don't have a lot of time, as we all know, so I will try and do as much as I can in the time I do have. The thing about Classic, it is a very much slower paced game, so it's going to take me a while to level up, and I'm not sure I'm going to make it, but I'm going to have as much fun as I can doing so. So what I've also been working on is some flipping profiles for Samadan. I've started to see what I can do here with commodities. I've got a very basic profile here at the moment that I share over on Patreon, which is basically all the ore, leather, herbs, fish and cloth. I'll start expanding on this and expanding into professions as well, as much as I can over the coming months. So this is just very, very basic. Flipping, I've got 29 gold at the moment. I think I've invested in some stuff. Let's go check the mailbox. It's nice to see so much activity on Classic still. It's only going to get more. So I've got one sale here of the copper ore that I did have on. I listed quite a lot of it actually. So I'll just pick all of that up. Try and get a little bit more diversity. I think I tried resetting the markets on these and it very quickly went down to a much lower level. So it's still a lot of work of getting a feel for the markets. So it's just a question of really getting a feel for the markets. What kind of realistic prices you can flip things for. And then looking at other materials and things that I can start building up my gold reserves on. Let's have a look at Golden Sandsome at the moment. I bought that for 43, it's down at 42. So again, there's a little wall here at 5 of 20 at 42.95. See if I can recoup my costs at that point with a little bit of loss in the auction house fees. And with the copper ore, it does seem to have been reset. My average price is 5 silver, so I can come in quite aggressively here, just at the 753. Post a whole load there and see if I can make a few sales there. Maybe not. It'll be fun to find out. It's kind of just early days at this point, just to see if I can get some gold. I can probably earn a lot more gold with my other 2 characters running them together at the moment, so we'll see how they get on in due course. So lots going on for me at the moment. Really excited for what's to come with World of Warcraft. Let's go have a look at the blog and talk about the main event, all professions and Dragon Isles. Okay, so here's the economy blog for this week, and wow, what a week indeed. the announcement of 10.0 Dragon Isles, and with a surprisingly big focus on professions, which is fantastic for us gold makers. Now, we didn't get our carpentry profession as I hoped and predicted for all player housing, so there is still possibilities of that happening over a couple of expansions in the future. But that sounds like a very, very big job, so I think they've got to really work on their resources for that one. So that's to come, but what they are working on with professions looks very, very promising. So what do we know so far? There's a big information dump. We don't really know a huge amount until we actually start seeing it in alpha and beta and seeing how it all works and how the specialisms work and things like that. But they did do a great big deep dive, a special video on it, which I've got linked to down here, talking about professions. And you can see their ethos behind this, which is really, really promising. They say that they really want to rethink professions and figure out how to make them part of your identity as a player, if that's what you want. You want to make sure professions feel fun and relevant across all levels of gameplay. So that's a great philosophy to really focus on those. And I think what they're doing shows a lot of promise. Puts a lot of depth into professions and gives you chances to customize things. And with the new work order system, there's a lot of possibilities there. And how that's going to affect the economy is going to be very, very interesting over the future. So they did share with us a couple of screenshots of the professions as they currently look at the moment. So the first thing that's been introduced is this concept of quality to both the actual crafted items and to the actual reagents themselves. You can see these little dots here indicating the level of quality of the materials used, and this bar on the side seems to indicate, okay, it's going to be somewhere between a 1 and a 2 quality, and you can see this one's between a 4 and a 5 quality. So there's different things you could probably put in, different skills that you might add to this to be able to increase the quality. I'm not quite sure what this bar here does at the top. If you look at this prototype in one of the screenshots, you can just about see some numbers here, and they're obviously talking about tiers here at this point, but I think this is just like a mock-up screen, so I wouldn't take any huge amount of weight from this one. But it was really, really nice to see this complete revamp of professions. You've got a little use best quality reagents here and track recipes, so there's a whole load of different things here. You can see some interesting things, saxifrage, draconic vials, awakened frost. So these are all the new herbs and ore and things. Names might change over time, as we had with Shadowlands. That's absolutely fine. But lots of different profession items here. Your combat potions, your utility potions, trinkets, your usual alchemy things, and then weapons as weapons, armor. And this is interesting. Professions, tools, and gear. So from the blacksmithing side of things, you can make a needle sets, pickaxes, skinning knives, and these will be things that other characters will then be able to wear. We'll get into the sort of like things you can wear a bit further down. So there's some nice interplay going on with the professions. Really looking forward to seeing how this pans out. So overall, very promising. So you've got the concept of quality, and then they're also introducing the concept of stats, specifically to your profession, including crafting and gathering. And this is a major input into the level of quality. Now, I suspect this is probably down to resourcefulness, which is here at 9%, and inspiration, we've got here at 4%. There's a couple of extra ones here. So I wonder if your specialisms and your items you wear will add to that stats amount. That's kind of like what they're talking about here. The biggest source of which for stats is specializations, which can be learned through various ways in the world. For example, like finding an old book or a hermit in a cave that can teach you something about your profession. So it sounds like we're going to be exploring the world, finding little hidden places where we can learn some special recipes or special techniques, things that will add to our points. There was a really good interview that Hazel did with Ian, and she's obviously a big profession and TSM person herself, and he made specific mention to talent trees for professions, that each of these professions also has a talent tree, a specialization to it, so that rather than just picking, let's say, armor smithing or weapon smithing, you can then invest in armor smithing and then further into making plate armor and further in making helms, and then have bonuses to your ability to make high level ones at a higher level of quality that are at least initially exclusive to making the choice to invest in specializing. So there's a couple of interesting hints there. And it goes further on to talk about it here. Long-term players and completionists who we know there's a decent Venn diagram overlap between hardcore crafters and completionists, as we well know, and we'll be able to eventually make all things, but that's a long-term completionist goal. So this specialism sounds like it's going to be something that you could focus on really early game in the first few weeks and months, and go min-max right down one area of specialism and be the one that's known for that. But then eventually, by the sounds of it, you'll then be able to fill out the rest of your profession, which for me was quite a relief, because I was worried when they were talking about these specialisms. I was going to go, okay, I've got a character that can do each of every professions. Now am I going to have lots of alts, and am I going to have to fragment all my professions on certain specializations? Now that may still be the case, and so if you have got an alt army at your disposal, now might be a good time to start making sure they're all leveled up and ready for Dragonflight, because it may be that a couple of professions can specialize in different ways and get the jump on the markets. Ian talks a little bit more about this, thinking back to a really successful example of this is back in Wrath of the Lich King with dual crafting, where you did your dailies and you got a currency that you can use to get patterns off a vendor, and you could choose what specific thing you were going to learn to make. And that sounds like some sort of daily time-gated progression that if you focus on certain things and certain maybe you get points for your specialization or something like that you can then spend further and further into a tree. You can either go broad and try and do a bit of everything, or you could focus on one specific thing and be the best at that. But then eventually, maybe you'll just be able to fill everything out. And maybe it is these dailies and currency that will then be able to further get depth into our profession trees. You can see this is where their thinking is going. Obviously, it's still very early days yet. We don't really know for sure. And then he says here, long term, everyone ends up with a lot of stuff. But as you know, with crafting, especially in the first few weeks and months of a tier, where there's the most focus on getting an advantage of specialization. So that's a piece of how we hope this will play out. So they've definitely got ideas of taking stuff from old expansions. And I think this is probably a promising idea. I like the fact that you can eventually complete everything. I like the fact that you can maybe focus on one particular area just to be really good at that in your market niche. I really like the fact that he said, I don't think we're looking at gold as a sort of backbone of startup costs like we did with Legendaries, where the crafter might feel they need to invest up front without any instant recouping, like 1 million gold in skilling up a particular pattern in order to be able to make a thing that would then recoup over time. This is how the current Shadowlands Legendaries works out, and I agree, not a very good system. It really did exclude a lot of people, except for the very rich, who could just throw money at it. And it just seems so wasteful to me. I just didn't like the concepts from that point of view. Whether we'll get something repeated back in this with professions, I'm not sure. Obviously, everyone's going to be wanting to make the best quality items, so at this sort of quality 5. So anything that you make it quality 4 and below may become obsolete very quickly. You may be able to make it cheaper, but players are going to want the best as quickly as possible. So how much waste we get in this system, I'm not sure how it quite pans out yet. It's still very much early days before we can see how that works out. So far, so good. Even better to this, which is, I love the idea of this, is you can wear specific gear which will have special stats which add to their craft, and their own slots which automatically switch out when you use that profession. So you're not having to carry them around at all. You've got a special area where you can put these items and upgrade them, and they'll add to your stats, which is really, really nice. And you could see here, at least from the blacksmithing point of view, they're thinking about things you can make to then give to other profession makers, which I love, that kind of interplay between professions. So a big overhaul, really, onto the professions and the way we craft things. You can see an example here. This is crafted quality 4 out of 5 with a little 4 dots on it here. There's no crafted by name here, which is interesting. That's something very important in terms of remembering who the good crafters are on your server. So a couple of comments from the Reddit threads on this. Particularly like this change and agree with it. You're the helm crafter and everyone comes to you on your server because everyone knows you make the good stuff. Again, how quickly this pans out and how you get to know people on your server and who's the good helm maker will be interesting to see how that actually works. I mean, in terms of the concern here, how will they balance the game? What about smaller servers? Chances are not every slot will be covered. Should we need to relearn the profession to change specialization? Or if they make it changing too easy, there's no meaning to specializing in a craft. I got a feeling that this is probably something that we would deal with an alt army, and I think the smaller servers in fact might be at an advantage here, because it'll be much easier to get your name out there as the crafter of a certain thing. How this works on a big server is another worry. My one worry is this will have another legendary situation where you might specialize into something and find out it's useless, or alternatively, everyone could spec into the same thing because something's really popular, and that negates the point of having to crafting order system because no one can build the plate boots at high enough quality. So yes, there's going to be this market demand, and there's always going to be people who will look at the system, they'll try to game it as much as possible and min-max it, and will focus on one thing. We'll all be talking about it, say, oh, this is the best in slot, or this is the best in slot. People will follow these guides, and then nobody else makes the other things. But we'll see how that actually pans out in terms of usefulness. It's really nice that they are thinking of professions as well, in terms of it's going all the way up to mythic raid level gear. So they are thinking of professions being involved in crafting of everything right up to the top end gear, which is fantastic. And how they're going to go about that is through crafting work orders, which is another thing they're adding into professions, which I think is fantastic. We still don't know a huge amount at this point. So some excerpts here from the deep dive video. You can basically browse any of the recipes that can be crafted. Pick the one you want for yourself, and then you include some or all of the reagents needed for the recipe, including ones you can only get yourself. So this is bind on pickup stuff. So you might go to a dungeon, say you're a high-end mythic player, you pick up a certain item or thing that is bind on pickups, like say in this point, say it's this primal conversion. Maybe that's bind on pickup, and you can only get that by being a high-end mythic player. So you have that, but you can't craft it because maybe your guild says everyone has to be engineers because of the wormhole generator or something like that. So it doesn't force you to use a profession or drop professions to be able to craft it yourself, and you don't necessarily have to invest in a system that you're not so interested in as a mythic player. But as someone who's a mythic crafter who likes to do all professions and things like that, I can take the reagents and turn them into the thing that the mythic player wants. And then they've got this whole commission system on. So I'm still not sure exactly how this works. It's interesting, there's a recraft tab here. I'm not sure what that will entail. You can either post to your guild, you can post with someone specific, or you can open it out to everyone. You can find someone in person to do it right in front of you, which is another option, or you can go to an NPC and use an auction house type interface and send the order out. So you've got the interface here of a load of crafting orders that are out, and you can see they've got the basic item level, which I assume is tied in with this minimum quality that you have up here. So this is currently make something that's at least 1 star. Maybe you can set that up to a quality 5 and adjust your commission accordingly. There's nothing here that I can see that kind of tells you the cost of things, like I'm going to put up front these materials, these cost a certain amount. So from this point of view, all you're seeing is commission, but you're not seeing how much of the reagents that are required you'll need to fulfill as a crafter. So you're going to have to work out your profit margins. These aren't your profit margins if they don't include all the reagents themselves. How is that going to be passed on between crafter? So there's a lot of questions here still to it. And then the thing we were talking about the mythic thing, the item you have crafted can also be soul-bound. In the past, you could only get your hands on crafted soul-bound items by having a profession yourself. Now, anyone can have the item crafted for them, which expands on the number of items we can provide that are really powerful. So that's been one of the restrictions with professions at the moment. They could never make them that good because they don't want to flood the market with a whole load of things that are mythic level quality. So anyone with a huge amount of money can just go along and buy all the best items. They still don't want that. And so a way to stop that is to have these soul-bound reagents that can then be passed on to the crafter, and then the soul-bound item passed back to the person that did all the mythic work in the first place. So I think this is a really elegant solution, and I look forward to seeing how this works out. But I need to know more about this whole work order system. I got a few questions that I put together myself. As a crafter, how does it work when I'm only given some of the materials? Do I have to calculate the cost before accepting the commission? It's not clear in the interface above. I talked about that before. And at what point does the commission get fulfilled? I could be gathering the materials and crafting while someone else has hit send before me. Will there be a lot of competition as to who's the fastest crafter? What kind of interface we'll be using? Is this something that can be used as part of, say, TSM? It's still unknown at this point. There's not a lot of information here. I don't know. We've got these stars here, but I don't know what they mean. They just look like they're favoriting, something like that. At what point do you actually fulfill the commission, and how do you reserve almost your crafting slot. Does it come to the point of sending? In that case, you're going to have to be ready to craft at a moment's notice. But then you've also got to stop and calculate. If all the reagents aren't included and someone is only giving you 930 and it costs you, say, 1,500 to make this, then you're actually going to be crafting this at a loss. So this is a bit too simplified in many ways. How do we work out the profits? I love the idea of being able to specify just to guilds, but as many of us gold makers, we have our own guilds just to store all of our stuff. So we're not necessarily a member of an actual guild itself. So what kind of system could we have? I'm a wandering crafter, say, with multiple alts. And so you don't necessarily know the name of my crafter that can make the thing that you want me to make, but maybe I've got a go-to person that you can talk to about it. And maybe I want to serve multiple guilds. What kind of system? How would that work? And is there a forum for me to hawk my wares and get known on my server? I love the kind of almost the roleplay element of this and how it sounds like it would pan out. But I need to know specifics, really. They did talk about a trading area with crafting tables. And specifically in a further interview, Ian talked about the fact that some of the high-end items can only be done on these crafting tables. So there's this central area where all the crafters are going to be hanging out, making their things. So that's great. If say you're online at that particular time, you say, I've got this stuff, I need someone to make it. And you go to this crafting area and you say, okay, I need someone to make it. That sounds great. You can do some one-to-one interaction right there and then. But how does that work with all the sharding we've got at the moment and cross-faction and cross-server? You don't necessarily know whether the person you're talking to can actually fulfill the item for you because you haven't got that cohesion anymore. It's not like it was with Classic. So I think there's an issue there, and I'd like to see how that's resolved. In the video, they also mentioned about so you could throw in something extra at the end of the craft. I'm not sure whether that was just a throwaway comment in terms of fulfilling the order, whether that's just making it a higher quality than they actually wanted. Say they asked for a quality 2 item, and you end up giving them a quality 5 item. How that works, I don't know. And then there looks like an ability to specify minimum quality. I'm assuming that is represented here in the base item level. Whether those work together, I'm not sure yet. It looks great. First impressions, definitely. I think there's still a lot more I need to find out so I can actually work out how these logistics actually pan out in time. So I've got a couple of comments here from the Reddit threads. The links to those are up here as well. So to me, the interesting part was the ability to provide some or all of the materials. What will determine the price of the missing reagent? So using Shadowlands, let's say I need to craft a new legendary, but I'm missing the Essentia, so I provide all the mats except that, and I put in a 5k tip. How, as a crafter, fulfilling that work order, do I figure out my profit? This is what I was talking about before. How do you work this out? Does TSM have a method where you can work out whether it's profitable for you or not based on the price you set for your materials? There's some unknowns here, certainly. And then again, this is again in favour of using soulbound items, which is really nice. I think it's an elegant solution. In the old days, professions, you got a perk, but then they took it out because of the min-maxes. A patch comes out and 100% of the Mythic raid team has to max jewel crafting just to get the profession perk. So it was a really messy system, forcing the Mythic min-max players to do professions that they don't necessarily want to do. And then the other side of this, when you have a lot of soulbound items, like you had with Blood of Sargeras, and no profession to use them on. So there's some waste there as well. So the fact that you can pass soulbound stuff between different players is really, really nice. I think it's a very elegant solution. I've got a video from Lazy Goldmaker here. He goes through his thoughts on the profession systems. He seems very happy with how it is at the moment. Goes through everything that kind of I talked about here with his perspective on it. So video a watch. So it's very early days, but exciting nonetheless to see so much attention being put on professions. This is what I do all the time in the game. I very rarely do dungeons or raids or things like that, but professions and making gold is what I love. And this quote that came from the group interview just shows me that they are thinking about this. For a lot of people who already play the economy and hang out and deal with the auction house as almost like a full-time gameplay style. Yep, you're right there. We want that level of depth and more for professions. So our hope is that we'll see folks who are spending a lot of time hanging out in the crafting areas, applying their trade and picking up work orders, making gold and skilling up on the side as they do that. So that is exactly the kind of scene I would like to see. I'd love to see how it all works, and in reality, how it works on big servers, how it works on small servers, how you can interact with people but not necessarily just shouting out in trade, which isn't very efficient, how these work orders all work, and whether they can get abused by people who make a bot or something like that. I don't know. How are they going to prevent that? What kind of cooldowns there are, how it's all going to work is still unknown, but it's very, very exciting. So we'll know more over time, and I'll definitely keep you updated as and when I find out more myself. But that's not all the news. There's more sort of nearsighted stuff to come. 9.25, they've made a big change to Legendaries. They've massively increased the amount of experience you get from crafting items, which means you only have to make, I think it's 3 of each item to rank up, which is absolutely brilliant. That cuts out so much of the waste in trying to get a rank 7. And at this point, only rank 7s are really selling. So it's great for people like myself who want to fill out all professions, and I want to be able to offer everything to everyone. So I've been waiting until 9.25 hits before I fill out the rest of my professions on the rank 7s. Whether I make any gold on that, I doubt it, to be honest, because the profit margins are going to be slim and sales are going to be few and far between. But then you never know, people are going to be leveling up alts. They may want to get another rank 7 quite cheaply for their alt. They're going to be looking at maybe the next mythic season as well. There's still a lot of stuff to come. I mean, don't forget, with 9.25 you've also got the cross-faction play. So maybe a lot of people are going to be excited about playing that. So I think the legendary system, I think this is, at this point, the best thing they could have done to alleviate those issues. Whether they should have done it sooner or not, I'm not sure really. I mean, it was a system that a lot of people got very rich on, and I congratulate them on investing their time and money in doing that early. And I can see myself, for the small investment that I've played, I've been able to still get some steady returns on those. So it's a good system in terms of we're making something that is in demand for the regular player, but it's a poor system in terms of there was so much waste and it was so expensive. So I think this at least alleviates that. I mean, the comments here, I wasn't a large goblin, made 5 million. Glad they're making crafting catch-ups, but it was insane to literally have to dump 2 million in mats just to get rank 1 to 4 for each recipe at the start. It was crazy the amount of gold being involved. There was so much waste, and it was just so expensive. And here, getting decent gold off of the 233262, the Crafter's Mark gear, and then the occasional legendary as well. Again, maybe Season 4 will allow for another cycle if they get up those, but at this point you're not convinced. But it's good news. I want to get all rank 4 legendaries for completion in this status. And I'm the same. This is what I'd like to do. I just want to be able to fill them all out, max them all out, say, at least I did it, and then I can move on. So another good change coming up with 9.25. Not sure when that's going to come. Probably within a few weeks, I would expect, because there's going to be focus on Wrath of the Lich King, and then once we get to Alpha and Beta of Dragonflight, although I'm not sure because we haven't heard of any pre-orders yet, so watch out for the token price spiking when that does come through. And then another bit of news I mentioned in the group interview was ongoing expansion and customization is something we're looking to do, certainly by Dragonflight, possibly before then, rolling a lot of the white and grey quality items into the Transmog system, so you can choose from a lot of simpler, humbler civilian attire type looks. This is great. These should be in the market anyway if they've got a unique appearance on them, and people want to be able to wear what they want, and they don't want to be forced to actually wear that item. With the whole Transmog system now, you don't want to be running around in current content beating something over with a diamond tip cane and then wondering why all your damage is rubbish. Not that I've done that at all myself. And then very helpfully, the Legendary Noob has put together a list here of a lot of the items that that are white and grey and do have unique appearances. So there's a really nice list here. Now is the time to turn off your auto sell grey function in your add-ons if you have that, and start collecting some of these things, or maybe even going out and finding out where these things come from and then getting hold of them and keeping them in your bank. So there's going to be some interesting markets opening up with this. I love this kind of fun depth you can get to professions. That's why I still sell one of every shirt at the moment, just so that I can provide to those players that are looking for that unique appearance. And if I can craft something or collect something and sell it onto them, then that's all more fun for me. So that's it from me this week. There's a lot of really exciting information there. I'm so looking forward to what comes with 10.0 and Dragonflight. In the meantime, I'm going to expand out my professions on retail and get my alts all ready. And in the meantime of that, if I get the time, I'm also going to work on my Burning Crusade characters and try and get them leveled up in time for Wrath of the Lich King, because we're going to be seeing that, I think, within the next few months very quickly. And then there's a whole load of new classic content to look forward to there. So exciting times ahead. Really, really good for gold making and really good for the game as a whole. So until next time, happy gold making, and I'll see you very soon.